Good morning, YouTubers. Welcome to Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited and the continued build of the Capri. I'm now going to do a little bit of a sort of a how-to or how I would tackle the exhaust system on this car. It's going to be coming out of the turbo, obviously at the front there. The cover's I've just thrown a cover on the bonnet of the Capri there. It's not being covered up, I hasten to add. So I'm just going to bob the turbo on. I'm going to make a 3-inch pipe straight out the back of the turbo, which is the size the exhaust system is going to be, just to retain that. I'm going to add a flex, and then I'm going to pipe it into the two silencers, which hopefully you can see one of under there. All right, I'll show you one of those when I take it off. I've done the mountings and everything. I actually made the first mounting many moons ago, whilst I was on with the Capri, probably about 3 years ago. These are some Flowmaster clones from, well, they're made out of Chinesium. They came from eBay. I think, I could be wrong, I think they were about £25, £30 each, and I figured they were worth a go. They are aluminiumised mild steel, which go into a bit of 3-inch pipe that I bought many years ago again. Those were actually, somebody made those as roll hoops for a MX5, and he sold it again. I bought them on eBay. They were next to nothing, but that is a stainless steel outlet on the back. The exhaust, as you can see, dangles a little low, mainly because the exhaust on a Capri goes into some recesses. I don't have any means of doing that. What I will be doing when it's done is I'll paint it all black. It will burn off eventually, obviously, but hopefully that'll just make it a little less noticeable until it's covered in road grime and rust, which will be the inevitable. If it sounds good, it sounds all right, I'll either invest in some genuine Flowmasters or some stainless steel equivalents to these, which I think they're about £50–60 each. They're not a lot. I don't know what it's going to sound like at all. The turbo takes a lot of noise out. I've run it on open pipes, I've run it on slightly silenced side pipes, all sorts of different ideas over the years. It peaked off at 114.3 decibels, which, if you're aware with the decibel scale, is really loud. Too loud for track day, fine for drag racing, and weirdly never got stopped on the road with it. So yeah, I'm going to continue with this video on. I'll show you what I'm doing first on the floors. I'm just strengthening the floors a little bit, purely to stop the exhaust jiggly-joggling about. Okay, cheers. If you can see here, I'll try and lower you down there. This mounting I made many years ago, as I say, to go around there, a little bit of angle iron at the top, and it hangs the exhaust, it sort of supports the exhaust on L-shaped brackets. I saw this done many moons ago. A chap on a forum called Rods and Sods, who built hot rods for a living, did this, and it seemed a very logical idea, because actually, even if you have an exhaust bobbin fail, it's still supporting. Now, if I move into the car, I originally bolted these through the floor here in front of the seats. You can see where I've cleaned it up ready to weld, but the problem hereby lies that as the exhaust moves around, which it will with the engine, okay, it's moving the floor. I don't know if that's perceptible on the camera, but the floor is bending. It's not easy to see while I jiggle it about. However, it's not acceptable for me, that. So what I've done is, on this side, I welded a small piece of L-section steel across there with some holes drilled in it to tie it all together. I welded with what could well be the messiest welding in the world, a little piece of box that cuts at an angle there, just to tie all that in. So actually the exhaust is actually welded to the, mounted to the chassis rather than to the floor. And these tie the floor to the chassis as well, which helps strengthen it and just stop it vibrating a little bit. If I leave it like this, even with big washers, it's just going to tear the floor and eventually it's going to fall off. So that's not acceptable for me. Okay, so yeah, I've bobbed the turbo on there. Didn't film that. There's no need to film putting the turbo on, I don't think. I think you know, work out how to put 4 nuts and bolts in. And I've taken the liberty of building the outlet pipe. Now the V-band there, the 3-inch V-band, It's a bit blurry. The 3-inch V-band came with the turbo, and these are some 45-degree elbows that I've ordered. I ordered a load of 45s basically because I can make 90s out of 45s, and they should do the job. As you can see, it's quite close to the chassis upright there, but there is a gap, and I've mounted that now to come up over here. So as you look down towards the firewall there, the bulkhead, it comes up and over. The original plan was to come through here, but it was going to sit too close to the brake pipe for comfort for me. So those are only PTFE lined inside, which is really basically a plastic. So I didn't want them to melt due to the heat. So I've angled this up here. The next part of the job is going to be to make a 45 to come down here, which should end up close somewhere to the bulkhead. Now you can see the piece of pipe laid under the car there. That's coming forwards from the silencer. So that basically, I've tried to run that parallel with the chassis rail. It's just neater. Doesn't really make any difference, one iota, but I just thought I'd connect into that. Originally the plan was to come forwards from the silencers. But what I've decided to do now is actually angle the pipe across here, down past this wider section of the head of the exhaust manifold, and down here, so that will then lay just under the bulkhead. So what I'm going to do is mark where the exhaust ends at the bulkhead, so just put a line of tape each side so I know roughly where to aim for, and then I'm going to put a stanchion. I've cut some bits of pipe there with a 45 degree on the end, posting upwards. The tack can still adjust then, so I'll just tack those together so that I can then tie that into this piece here coming out of the turbo. This is still a little loose, as you can see. I can adjust that up and down a slight bit just to give me a little bit more clearance. And then what I'm thinking is, because all this is obviously bolted to the engine via the headers or exhaust manifolds, I can then tie this to the manifold. It won't be welded to, obviously, it'll just have a little bracket on there that I can nut and bolt it together, and that should help support the exhaust, the header and the turbo together, although I will be making some turbo mounting brackets to take some of the weight off the exhaust. Okie dokie, so I shall continue on with that, and then hopefully soon we'll be plumbing that pipe into the exhaust at the end, but I will be putting a V-band down at the bottom there, and then that gives me the option of running a side pipe straight out the side when I'm racing and just whipping those heavier side pipes off, and I can just run an open exhaust straight out the side there. Okie dokie, to be continued. Here on the Capri, I'm not worrying about where it mounts too much to the piece of pipe. I'll just shuffle that out of the way. It's going to sit under the floor thus. I wanted the flex pipe, actually that's come out really nicely. That length's about right there. So the flex pipe is sitting just slightly above the chassis rail there, but below the exhaust manifold. Obviously it expands to probably about 4 inches, I'd say, 100 mil, maybe a little more, maybe 115, something like that, 4.5 inches. So obviously that needs a little bit of extra clearance. I didn't want it rubbing on the chassis rail. This is just to stop as the engine moves about a bit, which inevitably will. It's just to try and stop it breaking components in the system. So that should sit, right in there, that should sit about there. What I've done there is, you can see that okay, I've just put a straight section to lead away from the downpipe. I'm actually going to put my V-band up above the flex here somewhere, so this will all be one piece onto the car. I may add extra V-bands at a later date, but it's not difficult to cut the exhaust and add a V-band in. You only need to remove about 4mm, 5mm, 3/16, something like that of material. I broke this end back off because it's not square at all on that end and there was a huge gap. I wanted to sit reasonably square. This is only on there now, so I can put a little bottle jack up underneath there, a couple of small spacers to allow a little bit of room under the car. And I can use that as a pretend exhaust pipe, and then I'll just nick that back off rather than try and cart around the entire exhaust as I'm trying to create it. And then obviously once these are all seam welded up, this will then become the downpipe from the turbo, which will somewhere have a V-band in it, so it can be removed at a later day without having to remove the entire exhaust system, which would be quite difficult. Okay. Change of plan there. I did mock a piece of pipe on the bottom of here, tried to mount it under the car, and it was literally like trying to wrestle a snake. So what I've done is I've welded a piece of pipe 27.5 inches long here, again just tacked together. Normally I would complete weld all these, but of course this is still a work in progress, so things may change here. Once I'm satisfied with it, I'll weld all this up before I weld it to the silencer. So this end, take you around now. So because I'm working on the floor here, I've actually got you on the floor too, so you're sort of laid at the same angle. So what I'm going to do is, the rough end that I've cut here, hopefully you can see, that will sleeve inside the silencer. I believe, if I remember rightly, the inlet of the silencer is actually oversized. Could be totally wrong, hope not. That's right, so that fits in there quite nicely. I allowed an extra ½ inch, give or take, to allow me to move it and give it a little bit of jiggly joggly in. That's a professional term, you won't have heard that before. It's utter rubbish, obviously, because I'm an idiot. But now if you can see under here, I've jacked the car up ever so slightly. Should be able to pull that to where I want to be. I can actually touch the floor of the car with that. I don't want that. Just want that piece under there. And this is my spacer, which I'm going to use. Just a piece of cardboard that's going to allow me just to leave a sort of a finger space under there. I don't want anything too tight together. It's all got to have a little bit of movement in it. You always hang an exhaust system, you don't actually sort of bolt it to the car, it sort of just rides there. If you bolt it too tightly, it will just break and snap and fatigue. So as you can see, it's in the pipe there, comes along, it's on me 2 wooden blocks. Little bit of cardboard there. Now I can lower the jack a bit. I've jacked the car up. There's a little bit of space there, clearance space there, and the downpipe is coming up, confusingly, and that's roughly between my 2 yellow lines. So now, obviously I can swivel that a little bit to where I want it, and I can extend and lower that. So that now just needs bridging between here and here. So what I can do there is I need another straight length of pipe, and hopefully that'll just end up here. If it doesn't, I'm going to have to call for some extreme fancy jiggly joggly in with the angle grinder. Just zoom you back out, I do apologise, oops. Okay. So that 45 will go on there, which should direct at that if my measurements are close to correct. hope you can see that. I hope you could see that. I've just done a bit of video of me welding that top section. I hope you could see it while I was doing it. You may or may not, it may or may not come out. I may not put it in the video. Basically, there's a little bit of a gap at the top, and I've managed to weld across that a little bit. It's a little bit scruffy. Obviously, it'll look better with a wire brush, but that's the exhaust now coming out of the turbo. If I move that little tie clamp, it misses there, it misses here. It's all tacked together right the way down. Excuse the earth. You'll also notice in that video I jumped quite a bit because the gun on my welder is absolutely totaled. I'm going away on holiday in a few weeks, and I need to order a new gun, but I don't want it to come while I'm away. So I'm trying to make do with the old one, which is trying to electrify me at quite regular intervals. So it made me jump a little bit. I don't jump so much when I'm burnt, but I do jump when I'm electrified. Anyway, electrocuted, sorry. So as you can see, it snakes out of the turbo, up in what is effectively a 90, although I have taken a little extra out of that in the middle, probably about an 85 degree, straight down into a flex there that misses the chassis rail. That now comes down here. There is space here. I can take my card out now. There's about a finger space. That's your rule of thumb when you build an exhaust. You should be able to get your fingers between everything, which obviously you can there. I want it reasonably tight. I may make another hanger to hang off the chassis rail here. We'll wait and see how that goes. And that is now into that pipe. If I was building a single exit system, all I'd now have to do is weld up with that solid and it would all be done. But what I'm going to do now is take this to pieces, fully seam weld it, bob it back in, make sure it all fits as it should, because it is still going to move slightly. Any little gaps are going to move. I've tried to weld up big sections to prevent that. Not very keen on these flexes. I've welded that up underneath. You can probably see that better if I zoom in. I've welded that up underneath, upside down. They're a little bit thick, and it makes it quite difficult to make a nice, neat, tight job on that. However, there it is. It's attached down into a scrap piece of stainless. I think that was 350Z exhaust. Another piece that I'd chopped about, which was actually a 45 that I'd changed the angle of slightly to come out of the turbo, but then changed my mind. 3-inch pipe straight into the silencer. I've tried to keep it up tighter at the front. It's a little lower at the back. I may actually have to change those at a later date. As you can see, the side exit comes quite high up, but obviously the centre of the car is where everything catches on things like speed bumps. So those are going to be the major issue. Now then, I may stop the video here. I am actually sure I'm waiting for a 90 degree so I can make the piece into the other exhaust. So I may do that as a separate video, or I may do that just as a little catch-up video or an update video. If the updates are terrible, please tell me. I notice they don't get as many views. I am still trying to learn what people want to see. I know I also witter on a little bit. I appreciate that. I'm going to try and address the sound levels in this video for my speech and things, but I hope these are of use. I hope you enjoy watching them as much as I enjoy making them, actually. So I'm going to now strip this off, weld it all up, and then I'll come back when it's finished, reapply it to the car, and just let you see all the fit. Thanks a lot. So there it is, all welded together now, fully seam welded. Just giving it a quick Y wheel off. I haven't cleaned bits like this. Some of these bits have got a little bit of sharp sort of muck on it, and there's like a little pinhole there by the looks of things, which needs addressing. There will no doubt be a few little tiny pinholes here and there. There's this sort of volume of welding in a section of exhaust. However, quite pleased with how it's come out. This is where it exits the turbo, up over the chassis, down into this flex, which I've just finished welding and weighs more than the sun, down into that 45 degree at the bottom, and then away to the silencer. I'm not going to weld that to the silencer today because at some point on this side I'm going to have to put a junction in there, and I'm not sure exactly where yet. And I can't do that until the 90 degree bend comes, which is supposed to be the end of next week. So what I'll do is I'll terminate the video here. That's this. Oh, sorry, no, I won't terminate the video here. I'll put it back on the car and show you it fitted back up, looking all shiny. I will need to put a lambda boss in it at some point. So, okay, so there she is, fitted back on. There's the exhaust coming out the V-band. It's tight to the frame rails there, the chassis rails. However, it does miss. I may have to put a speed dent in there. I also am going to have to put a lambda bung somewhere in this for a lambda sensor. I will check with my ECU guru to see where that wants to go. Into basically a 90. Exposure's appalling, sorry about that. Down into the V-band, into the flex. So it comes up and over, down there, into that flex. The clearance there is quite evident around the bulkhead and underneath. There's a good finger's width there, so it's got plenty of movement in it and it won't catch. I was saying earlier about things moving when you weld them. This part of the downpipe is now touching the header manifold there. It didn't do that before. It doesn't matter, it won't make any difference. It's not sort of tight against it, so I can't tighten it up, but it has moved. You obviously don't want gaps in any of these joints. These all want to be absolutely perfect, especially if you're tigging. But TIG or MIG, it's better. The better the fit, the better the result. Now then, I don't have a lanisher and I don't have a bandsaw, so I can't actually do that to get those all absolutely perfect. Even with the angle grinder, it's very difficult. I get them as close as I possibly can to get nice, neat welds, but it is virtually impossible to get them perfect. And things like this, where I've actually bridged a gap, and you can see the width of the weld comparable to these ones where it's a lot narrower because I've had to bridge a 3/30 seconds gap somewhere, something like that in there. Then obviously that's difficult, and you can't do that with a TIG. People will be able to do it, I can't. The time it would take me to set the TIG up to do this just for a one-off job it's just not worth it really. I could do it with the TIG, I can TIG, but I just don't want to. This is fine for my car. If I was running an exhaust shop or an exhaust place that made exhaust pipes all the time, I'd do everything with the TIG and I'd have all the equipment to do it. But for for my race car, this is absolutely fine. So yeah, that comes down there into the second V-band, into the flex, which allows a little bit of movement. If I get down on the floor with you, the wormices, you can see it comes down the bulkhead. Looks like it's touching, but it actually is not. And then I'm down there to the silencer, muffler. As I say, you can see there what they look like, and then out the side. If this was a single exhaust system, that would be now finished. I'd weld that up there, as you can see in here. It isn't welded there because I have to tee off there when the other parts arrive to go into the other silencer muffler, as you can see on the other side. Now then, I'm going to end the video here. If you aren't bothered about seeing the second part where I do that, because as I say, I need to wait for that 90 degree and I'm waiting for a V-band as well, by all means just say, don't waste your time. If you would like to see it, by all means please comment and say so. I do appreciate your feedback, as long as it's constructive and you don't have an argument with yourself like somebody did about disagreeing with how I did things. Of course you're welcome to disagree, that's life, you're allowed an opinion. But yeah, if you're not bothered, please just say. If you are bothered, please just say, and I will do another video when I finish the exhaust system off on the other side. It's supposed to come the end of next week, is the 90 degree, but whether it will or not is another matter. Oakley dokley. Thanks for your time. Hope you're enjoying it. I sure am. Cheers. Bye bye.